Hiya! Welcome to this, my 88th episode of VideoFuzzy. I'm your host, Terry J. Aman, with this episode celebrating 6 years, sifting my basket of media memories. In this installment, titled Psyched Out, another road trip, I get some help exploring a Psych episode remake that's been in the works for a while from longtime friend and friend of the pod, Kirk Nybach, and of Minot. Welcome to the show.
He doesn't have it on video, does he? We'll find out together on VideoFuzzy.
Welcome to this, as I mentioned up there, a celebration of 6 years posting updates on my media cataloging adventure, and be sure to check out VideoFuzzy the soundtrack, where I poke around in my music collection. This last one I interviewed a DJ friend of mine in Denver, explored artists in my collection starting with the letter D. Check it out.
And now, VideoFuzzy presents Fuzzy Feature.
In episode 86, I did a callback to October of 2019, where I encountered a bunch of Psych episodes on the Hallmark Movies and Mysteries channel and added episodes that aired during the dark ages of my collection. That set included a recording of the disc X287 of the 8th season Psych episode titled Remake, also known as Cloudy with a Chance of Improvement, which harkened back to the first season installment titled Cloudy with a Chance of Murder, the first part of which turned up and said I covered in episode 86, then cut off, so I couldn't discuss it properly. Well, the second half turned up in this set, so between Classic Collection Disc 1401 and 1463 and Current Collection Disc X287, I have the original and the remake, and it feels like this episode, celebrating 6 years of this podcast, is a great chance to finally chat about them. It is my long-promised exploration of, we are told, unprecedented weirdness, episode do-over for the USA Network series Psych, starring James Roday and Dule Hill, fake psychic detective Sean Spencer and his friend and known associate Burton Guster, aka Black Cameron, aka Robert Johnson, aka Bob. I didn't get that. The pair of them taking a moment or two during take two, so as to cast aspersions on, well, remakes, and how they never live up to the original, be it Billy Bob Thornton's appearance in the Bad News Bears remake, or James Roday's appearance in the Dukes of Hazzard remake, or Johnny Depp in the Willy Wonka remake. The Psych episode remake. I tried to understand first why they'd even done it. I mean, it's very true that season 8 ran kinda thin, and in some ways it was barely Psych anymore, but these are incredibly talented writers and actors, and wouldn't need to revisit a season 1 episode for no especially good reason, unless there was, well, an especially good reason. As Sean points out, the whole point of a remake is to choose something that showed serious promise, but failed to live up to expectations. Apparently there was a long-standing disappointment among the cast and crew with this episode, that it lacked the humor of other Psych episodes, and maybe it was a courtroom focus might have felt too much like a procedural, according to the Psych fan wiki. Okay, well then, who am I to argue? As they're being drawn into the case first time around, Sean, who is at the courthouse to pay accumulated parking tickets on his motorcycle, notes Jolie Jenkins as Sandra Panich, a beautiful woman on trial for murder, bending to pick up a piece of trash. He intuits her innocence from this act of civic responsibility. In the remake, the beautiful Sandra Panich, still on trial for murder, but this time played by Lindsay Sloan, helps them directly, pointing them to the window to pay a parking ticket, specifically Gus, whose flirting is uncharacteristically on point. In both the original and the remake, the murder victim was handsome local weatherman Jackson Hale, played by Mark Brandon and Dana Ashbrook, respectively, found dead on the Channel 8 weather set. Sandra was in both cases discovered unconscious near the body, apparently knocked out by him after having stabbed him. The original took Sean and Gus to the law firm of defense attorney Adam Hornstock, played by Michael Weston. That is, the actor Michael Weston, not the Burn Notice character former spy Michael Weston, who's played by Jeffrey Donovan.
Get on with it!
So anyway, Michael Weston, that's this Michael Weston, not that Michael Weston. The character of defense attorney Adam Hornstock is a bit of a bumbler, just greatly assisted by Sean, and specifically in the case of at least one juror in each production, Gus's tie, which boosts his confidence and helps give the case some traction. The remake focuses so much more on Channel 8 news, the scene of the crime, the relationship between the married couple anchors, Morty and Connie Camp, played by Carlos Jacot and Janet Varney, who Sean divines are on the rocks. Sean also discovers the murder weapon in the break room / office of Jackson Hale's assistant, certified meteorologist Reuben Leonard, played by Michael Eklund, and then by Adam Ruck, who also played Cameron in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. They did keep the court scene almost line for line from the original to the remake, where Reuben Leonard breaks down in open court with the admission that he hated Jackson Hale, whom he said should have been stabbed years ago. Prosecutor Logan Phelps, played in the remake by Ralph Macchio, objects, and both judges, Horace Leland, played first by Donnelly Rhodes and then by Ray Wise, suggests he might have been a little late with that objection. Also in the remake, Reuben Leonard is apparently poisoned in the studio while trying to do the weather forecast. The subsequent scene with the jealous rage of the receptionist was a heated moment in the original, largely because she was the murderer and confessed her guilt in open court. It was less dramatic this time because this time the murderer was none other than jealous anchor husband Morty, who had no reason to be because his wife wasn't sleeping with the Randy Weatherman. But it was exposed in the late-breaking videotape when his green screen bodysuit ripped, revealing his pinky ring. Good thing, too, both the original and the remake, the murderers pretty much confessed in open court, and in both cases pretty much needed to. The resolution on the first one had Lassiter gaining a renewed respect for Sean and keeping a falsely accused defendant out of jail, and busting Sean's motorcycle out of auction being held to recoup Sean's parking tickets, which both Hornstock and Sean's dad were on the scene to help with as well. The remake was less of that, more Hornstock coming to the psych office and asking Sean if it'd be okay if he dated Juliet, which obviously that goes nowhere, but it let the show end on a funnier note with that long look back. I had the pleasure of watching both episodes back-to-back with longtime friend and help between last episode talking about USA's White Collar and this one, my new VideoFuzzy co-host, Kirk Nybach of Minot. Welcome.
Coming up on my, actually 6th year anniversary of this podcast.
Is it really?
So I wanted to do something kind of neat for it, and when the, second half of this turned up on my disc, I was like, we watch these things, we talk about them.
I didn't even realize it was a remake.
I guess I was gonna see if, first, what did you think of that? We just got to watch the season 1 and then the season 8.
Yeah, they were definitely different. You could tell the season 1 stuff didn't have a lot of the things that, came along, and they incorporated, all the nicknames and all
the nicknames, I was noticing that, but I was like, they used so many of them, but they focused all on the weather. Like, why don't you have a weather-related name? Windy morning dew.
They had more of them, in the second one, but...
Oh, Lord, there's some good men.
Yes, quick breaking in here with the list of names that came up with for the Weatherman, including Johnny Mountain, Dallas Rains, Bolt Lightning, Claudia McMillan, Wendy Morningdew, and from the remake, Cumulus Jaycott, Aurora Borealis, Humid Lazenby, Frozen Diamond Doppler Dewey, Hurricane Carter, Leaf Garrett, Blizzardo, Tsunami Ali, Puddles Takahama, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. High Tide, and, of course, Dick Iceluge. And quick shout out to the good people at subslikescripts.com for their episode transcript. As we were saying...
There had to have been some guy who got paid for making those names up.
Then the second one, the stunt casting was real obvious. I mean, Ray Wise has done a couple of these. He was in their tribute to Twin Peaks at one point, and he appeared as a priest, I think, in one of the other ones, but now he's a judge in this one. They get the guy who played Cameron, good eye on that. Guy who played Cameron, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and they played Ralph Macchio.
Rocky Macchio, yeah.
Good Lord, it was like...
Yeah, they definitely had a bigger budget.
Oh, Lord, just for sets. They did that whole Sky Zone trampoline park for that. For that one... Basically for that one kid punch.
To punch that guy right in the groin.
Holy crap, poor Cameron. But yeah, I wanted to check out, watching them back to back, what they decided to change. The story got way more complicated in the second one. They added a murder. I felt like that first one, if she hadn't just broken down on the stand and confessed, I don't know that they would have had a show. I mean, it was kind of like her shadow was looming on the background. So they used the green screen in both of them, but in this one, the guy is in a hentai suit or something with his ring, his pinky ring exposed. And that was another one where I thought the final clue, the first one was kind of like a magic eye. I mean, unless you knew you were looking for someone's shadow on the thing, you weren't going to see it. And the cloud isn't. And this one, while he was reviewing the tape, he was running it back and forth, and I don't think we ever saw a ring.
We didn't see the ring.
And I knew, I peeked at this beforehand. I knew that there was going to be something to look for, and I was kind of like, well, it wasn't like they were playing fair. They made reference to it earlier in the show. It's like, wow, that's quite a ring, but it wasn't something that we saw on the screen in front of us or had a chance to. But yeah, 2 back-to-back Psychs. The writing's good. The first one, I think, focused more on the relationships. I think that the getting him involved with Jules, I think they knew where that was going to go. And this one, I think they just had a whole lot of wacky funster stuff happening with
it was set in the past, so they knew what was going to happen, from seasons 1 to 8. So they had a lot of fun predicting stuff like that.
Oh, it was pretty cool. That was one of the things I didn't watch for. The first one was like the 12th episode of the first season. So if we had dropped that episode from season 8, if we had dropped that one into the season 1 lineup, I'm wondering if that would have made no sense.
It would have probably made very little sense.
I mean, sort of, who the hell? Where are you guys getting Kurt Fuller from? Woody Strode. It's like, oh yeah, he's a huge part of upcoming seasons, but he's nothing back then. And then, the Jules stuff would have been a little bit prescient, but I don't think it would be out of place. What was a little out of place was Lassiter. His grudging respect for Sean in that specific episode doesn't seem to match what was coming up to it, and his whole seasons 2 through 5 almost. It's like they become friends. I mean, goodness, the guy stands up for his wedding or something, but he doesn't. I mean, he wasn't there in season 1. They were like, "What the hell? Is it psychic?" Have a lot of regard for that.
Yeah, my favorite line in that was when he was describing Jules. He says, and we're going to have so many kids. Many of them will have to be put up for adoption.
So many. And I guess I was going to, just check with you about what you thought of how it held up. I mean, just in terms of noting the changes between the first one and the remake, the decisions that they were making, and how was it a stronger story, do you think? You
know what? I probably watched that one at one time and didn't remember that it was one in season 1. So I think they both hold up on their own.
Oh, yeah. It was a completely... Yeah, I would have get,
I guarantee I didn't remember there was one that was done before,
Oh, there was 7 years between... They were also, completely...
And there was enough of there was slight differences that it wasn't, completely...
If you remembered the first one, and then rewatched it, you wouldn't have been spoiled because they changed.
They were that much different. They were.
And the receptionist was a very different character from the one to the next. It was a lot of fun to watch. The anchor couple was a much more prominent part of the.
Yeah, the 2 receptionist ladies were very different. That one guy, he was happy that he got roofied.
I wanted to find that guy. That was the best Mickey I'd ever been slept out.
And he was so happy, in open court, that he was admitted that he was part of a one-night stand. And he was just giddy,
And he was literally the last person at the bar.
It was funny.
I wondered how the prosecutor knew about that, though, because it was how on earth did he know to call? I mean,
because he was over there. I don't know.
The whole timeline for this thing was they spread it out so it made a little more sense. None of this happened a murder trial doesn't happen the next day, but it's okay. But now, a month later, how on earth does anyone remember? She brushed her teeth for 3 hours and just ran from the... God. Oh, Woody. Oh, you poor thing. I think the thing that stood out for me was the couple. I mean, the anchor, adding that wrinkle to the storyline, I thought really cemented it as a local news station, like a Santa Barbara news station. And then really, I thought made it a stronger story. I think the characters, it just made more sense the way they were doing it. Sean's reveal with the murder weapon was great. It was like, oh my god, I just like, punching the drop ceiling and the knife falling out. That was kind of incredible that would even still be there. I would have just taken an opportunity to get that the heck out of the.
Yeah, that wouldn't have been there.
But it was cool. I thought they did a fine job. So, but yeah, I just wanted to thank you for, goodness, you've done 2 of these and you're practically my new co-host for VideoFuzzy. But I appreciate the time and are able to get together.
This was awesome.
Oh, I was going to ask you, because you got a chance to watch more of The Middleman between when we were here last and now. Kirk, what did you think of that?
Middleman is awesome. It really is. It's a really just a cool show.
Oh, it's fun.
It's a lot of fun, it is. That's all I can say about it. It's just really, it's funny and.
Oh yeah, a world where comic books, all those mad scientists and all the comic book stuff, that's all real, and we're just keeping a lid on it.
Yeah,
barely.
No, I like all the characters in there. It's just fun.
It makes a lot of fun of itself too. The photogenic subletter. So she shares an illegal sublet.
Oh man!
I thought the writing on that was fun, and I thought it was sad that it only got 1 season, but they did a lot with it.
They did a lot. They didn't need any more seasons of that. It was just it's really good.
It was perfect. I thought it was great. Oh, I was glad you got a chance. And I was glad we got a chance to watch this here, too. So thank you so much, Kirk. And
absolutely. It was fun.
Real good night.
Fun show, fun night. And again, thank you so much for hosting me for this. Just good to see you, man. Thank you for you, Kirk Nybach, and thank you so much. Cross Connection. Psych is very much a known quantity at this point in my Studio Murphy Under challenge. The presence of Dule Hill of the cast sets everyone involved firmly in the orbit of Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip. Even drilling down to the guest stars is a little pointless because, okay, you've got Kurt Fuller and Grayson Frankie with Lily Tomlin, who is in The West Wing with everyone from Studio 60, and Alan Ruck, who is in Numbers with Judd Hirsch from Studio 60, and Ralph Macchio, who is in Naked in New York with Mary Louise Parker from The West Wing and Callista Flockhart from Brothers and Sisters with Rachel Griffiths from 6 Feet Under. But that's what happens with stunt casting and guest stars. I already ran Michael Weston, the actor Michael Weston, when I ran into him in Bird Notice, but I see he's also been in The Good Doctor with Richard Schiff, who may actually have been the same actor I used earlier in linking him from Bird Notice to The West Wing and thus Studio 60. Ray Wise was actually in The West Wing and in Mr. Sunshine with Studio 60's Matthew Perry, so no one's really posing much of a challenge here. I thought I'd have more of a fuss with the first season cast. The original Sandra Panich was played by Jolie Jenkins, who was in, the One Day at a Time reboot with Justina Machado from 6 Feet Under. My God, give me a hard one. Jenkins was actually in The West Wing, for crying out loud, so no, I don't think either episode we're talking about here is far strayed from the mystical center of my media collection. James Roday was in Fear Itself with Elizabeth Moss from The West Wing, so no, this show pretty much lives entirely there. I did, however, encounter a new arterial connection between the series, or rediscover one I'd forgotten. Michelle Trachtenberg, Buffy's sister Dawn in Joss Whedon's Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and Michelle Trachtenberg showed up in a recently cataloged episode of 6 Feet Under as Celeste, a starlet client of bodyguard Keith Charles, played by Matthew St. Patrick. Scrolling to find her character name, I saw where Golden Thread John Billingsley made an appearance. I think I ran into his episode not too terribly long ago, and oh wow, Tom Lenk, also of the Buffyverse, also dropped in, providing additional connections there. Very cool discovery or rediscovery, if I ever need a connection between the Buffyverse and Studio Murphy Under, sorted. In other discoveries, under my classic collection discussion, I talk about series productions I found in this set, including first season episodes of Bones, which included appearances by Jelko Ivanek, Damages, and a bunch of other stuff, including The West Wing. Are we doing this? Oh, alright, we're doing this. Golden Thread. Jelko Ivanek shows up all the way back in, I may have seen him in elsewhere, possibly in The X-Files, probably Frasier, almost certainly in millennia. He likely showed up in my collection in 24, and the practice almost certainly saw him in Oz. I know I've got him from appearances in The West Wing, Touching Evil, The Inside, Bones. I'd seen him in Lost, loved him in Damages, probably saw him in Big Love, The Event, probably White Collar, probably True Blood, possibly Suits, and I would absolutely have seen him in 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. That's absolutely in my collection somewhere. Jelgo Ivanek is the perfect creepy touch for a fixer, a handler, a shady underworld figure. He so utterly inhabited his role as a serial killer targeting young boys in the premiere of Touching Evil. He completely made that show. Storytelling needs villains, and he finds just the right energy. I had to step out and highlight, celebrate that. Love his work wherever I see it. I mentioned Robert Lasardo in a recent installment. He turned up in the first season Bones as well, as did Robert Gossett from The Closer. Meanwhile, I immediately recognized Harry Lennox of The Dollhouse when I saw him again as Chief of Staff and Commander-in-Chief. Then in an episode of The Ridiculous Fox Profiler Killer Instinct, I saw a serial killer with amnesia played by Brian Howe, more recently in my collection as the dad in AMC's Kevin Can F Himself, and I've got a part of a movie called Hamlet 2 that by all medical logic should have been a Coen Brothers film, but isn't. It's about a failed actor turned failing Midwestern high school drama teacher, but I don't know how it ends. It cut away partway through and the ending hasn't yet turned up in my cataloging. Anyway, I saw Catherine Keener from Being John Malkovich was part of that, and I thought, oh, cool. So if I find the rest of that one, I'll probably have to actually watch it at some point. On my Studio Murphy Ender challenge, it's got Amy Poehler in it, linking it to Studio 60 through Bradley Whitford's appearance on Parks and Rec, so pretty darn close. Diving into my classic collection. As I mentioned, cataloging my classic collection for this set, VHS to DVD transfers of discs 1451 through 1475, this set featured a lot of series material, including Desperate Housewives, 24, Battlestar Galactica, Criminal Minds, Numbers, Bones, The Dresden Files, 6 Feet Under, Mad Men, The Big Bang Theory, Castle, Sons of Anarchy, Grey's Anatomy, Flash Forward, Ugly Betty, Killer Instinct, Monk, White Collar, Robin Hood, The Prisoner, Nip Tuck, The Office, Parks and Recreation, and The West Wing. The Prisoner was from IFC rebroadcast's 1960s era original series. The episode that stands out for me was A Change of Mind, where Patrick McGowan, as number 6, becomes entangled in the bureaucracy of the village, the confusing mix of wardens and fellow prisoners, and how he's refusing to join the externally imposed and enforced social order. He observes how his captors have manipulated the townspeople to orchestrate a mildly unpleasant shunning, then turns the force of the mob mentality back onto his captors. It's entertaining as psyops, not especially practical against a trained MI5 agent, and interesting from a perspective awash in marketing and social media manipulation, now decades more advanced. I found the 78th Annual Academy Awards hosted by Jon Stewart and saved across 3 discs. Interesting. I found one of the funnier entries for first season Cougar Town where Jules is trying very hard not to fall in love with her young lover and he is not cooperating. Also, Halloween episodes of The Office where Michael falls into a koi pond, and Parks and Rec where Leslie is convinced a middle schooler is TPing statues in Pawnee and the situation escalates ad absurdum. The 3rd season of Battlestar Galactica opens strong with images of crew members as prisoners of the Cylons working to undermine their captors with espionage, sabotage, suicide missions, and other tactics used by those termed enemy combatants in America's War on Terror, which was ongoing at the time through mid-aughts. As they escaped and returned to the Galactica fleet, the storyline shifted the disruption caused by suspicion, retribution for aiding, abetting, providing aid and comfort to the enemy, and even on pain of death. Interrogation involved torture. People faced impossible situations. Even where prisoners helped when they could, the deaths they caused or helped cause, or which happened in the course of their inaction, got them thrown out of airlocks. By its 3rd season, these characters were known quantities, heroic, entirely sympathetic, and show creator Ronald Moore was using them to explore the kinds of ethical conundrums Americans were facing as a nation, but we were not encouraged to think about all that much. It was a good way to illustrate, and I was happy that someone was. I also found more episodes of the crime celebration Killer Instinct, which is set in San Francisco and just luxuriates in how weird they imagine serial killers can be. It's less compelling as a profiler because I don't really like the team leads. Even Shy McBride, who I love in Pushing Daisies, it's like they wanted gritty realism to underpin the bizarre situations they were encountering, just everyone trying to out-Dexter everyone else. This one only lasted a season. I followed it for much longer than I should have. I absolutely know that. Then there was an ad for PSP that had imprecisely animated dust balls of, just going by their accent, Mexican or else some otherwise undefined Hispanic extraction, doing a bit of world building while playing Grand Theft Auto. Exciting graphics played behind dialogue employing Speedy Gonzalez levels of cultural sensitivity, exploring one of the dust ball's ideas that were he to become a law enforcement officer, he would break several traffic laws and arrest all the dudes and marry all the women. He was then struck with the epiphany that he'd married all the women, including the ugly ones, so he'd take off with all his hot wives while the others chased after him, crying that they had a great personality. The ad barely mentioned the product they were selling, but I have to believe it was at least somewhat effective because here I am talking about it a couple decades later. I had another very Middle Western ad turned up for a local commercial for a local pizza place. Looked like choir singers gathered for a meal singing about the pizza order they'd made to the Neapolitan tune of Funiculi Funicula. We'll say ooh and you'll say ah, and we'll say ooh and you'll say ah. Then the owner comes in carrying a pizza the size of a wagon wheel while wearing a somehow larger mustache, and all of the ladies are suddenly similarly mustachioed as he sings the final line. We'll say ooh and you'll say ah. So that also happened. I encountered the 1976 silent movie by Mel Brooks presented by Fox Movie Channel. I was reminded of Marcel Marceau. Absolutely brilliant scene taken up entirely by this world-class mime's hapless attempt to answer his own phone and delivering the one line of dialogue in the entire movie. So much fun. Truly a comedic genius. The movie itself was quite funny, making up for lack of dialogue with over-the-top comedic exaggeration by people who knew from comedy, led by Brooks, Dom DeLuise, and Marty Feldman. Oh, God. There were a million cameos and even more stereotypes, but while the comedy has not aged well at all in terms of sexism, ethnocentrism, and substance abuse, it's never mean-spirited. It was just a fun find. I'm glad I found it. Since we're in the neighborhood, I'd been hearing some good things about the Netflix production of History of the World Part 2. Intrigued, I took in the pilot episode, and I was unmoved. Mel Brooks is a national treasure, and I wish him well, but while the sketch comedy in this case was certainly historical, I prefer mine to be hysterical. Pass. In other comedy that turned up, I found more entries in Monty Python Flying Circus, including the original airing of the Dead Parrot sketch. So much fun. And from the pilot episode of The Animaniacs in 1992, I found the cast performing The Monkey Song, which also featured a troubling amount of sexism. So, decades later, in children's programming, as presented by Steven Spielberg, we hadn't progressed quite as much as maybe we might have wanted to. I also ran into a bunch of music videos, including Beyonce's Check on It and Black Eyed Peas' frantic Pump It. Pump It had a decidedly Tarantinian flavor to it, with Monsieur Lou from Pulp Fiction sampled heavily and featured prominently. This seems to have influenced the structure of the music video some, with stylized credits in the opener and some Kill Bill fighting styles referenced throughout the piece. Beyonce's video used as much pink as we've been told to is involved with the Barbie movie, and the one I truly don't understand is my inclusion of the Killers singing Read My Mind, which is a bit like turning the monkeys loose in downtown Tokyo and having them perform antics and japes alongside a sort of goofball acid green caterpillar character peeking in at sleeping chambers. The band rode around on weird steampunk bicycles, bothering school children and Japanese Elvis impersonators, geisha high tea services. Nope, I dislike this band and I was not interested in this video even as art, but here it is in my collection. Well, the song itself is okay, and either way it doesn't take up too much room, so meh. Along with straight-up music videos, I also encountered the VH1 celebration of music and trivia called Pop-Up Video. I think through the 90s, a production team added little bits of trivia and graphics to music videos, commenting on the video, the artists, and the cultural universe from which they emerged. I have pop-up commentary on videos by R.E.M., Primitive Radio Gods, and Crowded House, which was cool to have. And later, from an MTV special, I found songs by Madonna, including Erotica, Oh Father, and her deliciously 1970s themed Deeper and Deeper. So much fun. Then I found Hell Yes by Beck. That was fun. Well, the video is better than the song, but I love the 3D holographic animations and the cute androids jamming out to it. I also found a Gnarls Barkley piece called Smiley Faces, which drops the duo into just a dizzying montage of historical events, clips from Motown, disco, funk, breakdancing, hip-hop in this animated film, a la Yellow Submarine by the Beatles, but called Baron von Counterculture's Groovy Purple Dirigible, always with band members CeeLo Green and Danger Mouse in the background, and bookended by clips from dueling music historians noting that as influential as Gnarls Barkley has always been for as long as they have, they actually don't exist at all. Ooh, eerie. Checking out my current collection. Getting into my current digital recordings, a couple episodes back I mentioned needing to see the 2019 thrill piece, The Goldfinch, because I love the author Donna Tartt. I truly enjoyed the life and the stories she tells, the characters she brings to the page, and I really enjoyed this one. The narrator growing up in the wake of traumatic loss, the anime of worlds so coldly cynical, and the growing horror as the prospect of financial ruin coincides with events set in motion years before threatened to blow up in his face, triggering a desperate transatlantic bid to recover a lost masterpiece. There are a couple of important spoilers from the story I cannot avoid in this review, and this author's brilliant work should be enjoyed directly. You've been warned. Past here be spoilers. The narrator, Theo, a schoolboy, loses his mother in a museum explosion. He is pressured immediately afterwards by a brief survivor to steal the painting, Carl Fabrici's 17th century work, The Goldfinch, which he manages to secure against theft by professional art thieves, despite a lot of energy expended, quite a few subsequent life disruptions, and rather precarious sheer dumb luck as the painting is transferred from place to place. Guided further by that survivor, he reaches out to the survivor's partner, Hobie, a furniture restorer and dealer in antiques. Theo takes on the role of Hobie's apprentice. He'd lost his mother, his boss had lost his partner, there's a whole vibe there, along with the young girl the partner had been looking after. Theo also goes to live with a kindly family, and just as he's settling in and things are kind of looking up for him, his jerk of an estranged father shows up and claims him, takes him to live with him in the exurbs of Las Vegas, and does everything he can to chisel money out of the boy, mostly to cover gambling debts. Meanwhile, Theo makes a friend named Boris, who is son of Russian mob. All of this happened in the book. All of it happens in the movie. In fact, I don't think there's much that happens in the book that doesn't happen in the movie. What it lacks is the overconfidence of a coked-up screenwriter who reads The Goldfinch, loves it, rips it to shreds in his drug-addled brain, and presents it to us in movie form. The difference being it's everything we loved about The Goldfinch, all the dark, wild energy. I did not read narrator as drug addict in this one, although he totally was, and not a plotting set list of unrelated incidents. Then this happened, then this happened, then this happened, and then this. The meaning of the story is in there somewhere, but the book is not the movie, and it can't be. The unfortunately low rating of mixed is sadly earned. What else? Well, we've been watching and enjoying the later seasons of BoJack Horseman, currently making our way through the 6th and final season. What started as a quirky, zany anthropomorphic comedy about title lead BoJack Horseman, a boundary-free anthropomorphic horse voiced by Will Arnett, snorting, slurping, and screwing his way through Hollywood high society, has fully transitioned into a harrowing inner journey fueled by pain, loss, and guilt, surrounded by fully realized characters also desperate for meaning and connection, and yet, somehow, still a comedy. This takes a deft pen capable of divining stakes, perspective, and presentation. A near-encyclopedic grasp of the history of comedy does not hurt either. A half-season teasing BoJack's chances of being nominated for an Oscar, and maybe winning it, for his title role in Secretariat, despite being 100% CGI, culminated in an extended goofy pratfall by anthropomorphic golden retriever Mr. Peanut Butter, voiced by Paul F. Tompkins, who chased the envelopes with the Oscar nominations all through every room of a hotel on into the street and down a sewer, ultimately losing them and having to come up with them himself, well, with some help from inveterate couchsurfer and confused person Todd, voiced by Aaron Paul. So despite Mr. Peanut Butter's announcement to the contrary, BoJack was not nominated, which was depressing, but there was no time to wallow in not being nominated for an award he had no way earned. He had a daughter scare. Well, A couple of them. First, some attempted intimacy from a daughter of an old flame of his in New Mexico, a canoodle interruptus by her mother fueling a ton of self-doubt. And then there was Hollyhock. Hollyhock wasn't looking for a dad. She had 8 gay dads already. What she wanted was her mom. She forced Bojack to reconnect with his mom, Beatrice, while they looked for her. As it turns out, Bojack wasn't her father at all, so much as her half-brother. Oh, Butterscotch Horseman, you cad. Well, meanwhile, his mother was poisoning Hollyhock with diet meds, which landed Hollyhock in the hospital and Bojack's mom in the worst nursing home he could find as retribution. Completely out of nowhere, Bojack reconnects with his former horsing around co-star Sarah Lynn, voiced by Kristen Schaal, and takes her on a blackout drunk bender across the U.S., which ends with her ODing in a planetarium. He finally enters rehab. And, as my husband Ralph pointed out, one thing that stands out about Season 6 is how over-the-top everything had been before. Now, everything trends towards resolution. I think he's right. Storylines, characters, and despite the continued wacky sitcom hijinks, there's an energy of closure running throughout, prominently featuring writer and Mr. Peanut Butter's ex, Diane Wynn, voiced by Alison Brie, and Bojack's ex, everything unless the plot relies on it, pink anthropomorphic cat, Princess Caroline, voiced by Amy Sedaris. It's a fun show, highly entertaining, not least of which because of the animal people sharing it. High concept, I think it's called. All the characters are deeply flawed and mostly unlikable, but somehow it works. We've been enjoying it a lot.
What I've been watching.
We got over to see The Machine, which I feel is a lot more cultural backstory than they were able to cram into the intro. Stand-up comedian Bert Kreischer outlines his immersive language tour in Russia, his brush with the Russian mob, and the train heist he apparently helped pull but was far too drunk to remember much about it, and because viral video, a Russian mob boss sees this doughy shirtless routine and determines comedian has my watch or something, and ooh, he's big mad and dispatches a dozen minions to recover him. Time got a little meaningless in this adventure, but it is 20 years later. Through therapy, Bert's inching closer to understanding how his antics have distanced his family, and we get a glimpse of the great model of fathering he's had to work with. He wants nothing to do with his carpet-selling dad, Albert. His wife and eldest daughter want so little to do with him, and the over-the-top Sweet 16 party is a case in point. It's so much his daughter wants to leave, and does so with a Russian mobster who has chosen this moment to yoink leverage for the little scavenger hunt the Russian mob boss wants Bert to undertake, led by his daughter Ivanka Fatal. Well, it wouldn't be much of a movie if they didn't. Bert the Machine, despite being so drunk at the time and the hotel being completely renovated, remembers not only the hotel room, but where a stash of ancient drugs is hidden in a wall. They then end up in the same train, which also seems unlikely, and they were tumbled out onto the tracks near the village populated seemingly entirely by the children of his old Russian mob handler, now simple builder and paterfamilias, who reunites him with all the booty from the train heist. There's a lot of action-y adventure that gets them to the boss level of this particular side-scroller, but the action comes to a head at the casino, where the Machine continues to be improbably lucky in his bullet-dodging capacities. His hostage father, who has been enjoying the mob's hospitality while the Machine has been reunioning, helps him defeat the minions and helps face down the mob boss. It was ridiculous, and there were so many Russian credits, I don't understand how Putin wasn't getting some kind of a cut from this thing. But I figured his international accounts must have been frozen by people capable of doing that, so I don't think my seeing it helped fund the ongoing aggression in Ukraine much. But this is so hard to be sure I did only see it the once. It was big, huge fun, and it seemed to have been attempted on smaller scales by this actor in the past. It's clearly a story and a character he's been developing for over a decade. That's clearly his name, and it is not autobiographical, but if you do ever get a chance to cast Luke Skywalker as your father, that's never a bad move. Mark Hamill was phenomenal. And with that, I should really get this in the feed. Thanks once again to Kirk Nybakken for his company, his kind hospitality, and thank you all so much for helping me celebrate 6 years of video cataloging. You can check out my catalog listing along with audio links at VideoFuzzy.blogspot.com, and for past episodes, add, subscribe, follow VideoFuzzy everywhere your podcast. Oh, and if you get a chance, check out my VideoFuzzy the soundtrack entries as well. Feedback is always appreciated. You can contact me through my blog or podcast sites via email to tjaman1970@yahoo.com or through my VideoFuzzy pages on Facebook and Instagram. For VideoFuzzy, I'm Terry J. Aman. Happy viewing.
It might be amazing, it might just be disgusting. We'll find it together on VideoFuzzy.